Episode 3 is the episode with Mosasaurs. I'm not actually sure what else I'm supposed to say in this introduction, so we'll just get right into it. The episode starts in a swimming pool. A lifeguard and his girlfriend are practicing diving after hours. The girlfriend leaves the pool while something else enters it. The lifeguard prepares to do one last dive. Actually, let's hold on the Mosasaur for a bit, because this is a rubbish Mosasaur. I mean, really, this makes Jurassic World look good. This Mosasaur is basically a osteoderm-encrusted crocodilian-like animal. Just compare the Primeval Mosasaur above with the Saurian Mosasaur below, and that should probably clear up any inaccuracies I would care to point out. The episode starts off at the Home Office, where Connor is demonstrating to a board of executives that the Carboniferous anomaly is still going strong. Cutter then explains to them that anomalies appear to be a phenomenon that occur frequently and have occurred many times throughout history.
Our job is to predict and contain them. We need to establish what happened.
Thank you, Professor.
Ben Miller then interrupts Nick as he's explaining the entire concept of the series, because he's behaving needlessly stubborn for this episode for some reason.
It appears we may have another one.
But first we go to the hospital, where Stephen reveals he can't remember anything after he got bitten.
You know, it's not until you got bitten that I felt that one of us might actually die from doing this.
Oh, I'm sure none of you will die in the next two series, eh, Stephen?
If you get killed, can I have your iPod?
Remind me to save this clip in case I ever review Series 2. Abby arrives and offers to give Stephen a lift home.
Oh, there's no need, my girlfriend's picking me up. She's been in the rainforest for 2 years researching infectious diseases.
Abby is understandably pissed off, but having lost his memory, Stephen doesn't know why. Anyway, back to the Mosasaur. The coppers think the girlfriend did it, because who else could have done it, and Nick is frustrated because he can't tell them the truth. Meanwhile, Connor asks Stephen on a date.
Connor, I'm flattered, but you're really not my type.
Meanwhile, Ben Miller explains to Claudia that he can't let the girlfriend off with the immediate crisis at hand. Series 1, and this episode in particular, dabbles quite a great deal in how the government would be able to control and contain a phenomenon such as the anomalies. This is lost in later series due to their existence in an alternative universe with the Anomaly Research Centre. Later on, at a nearby reservoir, the Mosasaur throws up a large mass of bone and gristle, which is identified to be the remains of the lifeguard. However, lizards, snakes and crocodiles tend to digest the bones that they eat and only vomit out materials such as feathers and hair that they can't possibly digest.
What type of creature could have done this to him?
What you should be asking yourself is how the remains of a boy who was attacked in a swimming pool end up 20 miles away in a reservoir.
Well, no, that's actually a perfectly valid question to ask, and you are the paleontologist here after all. Primeval then decides to make Ben Miller even more stubborn than Cutter.
Maybe there never was an anomaly. Maybe the girl murdered her boyfriend in the swimming pool and dumped his body in the reservoir.
It's very likely, provided you also believe she swallowed him whole and then drove 20 miles down the motorway to regurgitate his remains.
Well, the bolus does actually resemble that of a mammal more than it does that of a reptile. Cutter then suggests something we haven't seen the anomalies do before.
They don't just open, they move.
So Cutter arrives by dinghy, but somehow Claudia is already there at the reservoir despite them both being in the same meeting in the previous scene. Connor observes that the water is falling as the water pours into the anomaly like a tidal lake. Much like last week's episode, we actually see how the anomalies affect the environment around them rather than just letting out animals. Those are swans, they don't honk! Oh, and now we're repeating the same footage of the Mosasaur from earlier. Claudia talks to Nick about what else but Helen, until Nick notices something odd about the lake.
Steam. And you see, the tide must be coming in, bringing in warmer water from the other side. The steam is telling us exactly where the anomaly is.
So yeah, they find the anomaly and then some idiot swims head first into it. Meanwhile, Connor and Abby have been sent to do something boring like water sampling. At first, Connor's trying to find excuses for Stephen's misbehaviour in the previous episode, what with him being bitten by a large arthropleura. Then he remembers he wants Stephen for himself.
What am I saying? You know, you're right. He's a two-timing weasel, and maybe you should put that down to experience and move on. You know, there's plenty more fish in the sea.
Get it? Because mosasaurs are marine reptiles, so they, kind of live near fish? So they're standing below the waist in water, and yet somehow the mosasaur doesn't manage to beach itself when it rocks up. Also, stop reusing footage! They make it onto the land, but uh-oh, the Mosasaur's following them. Well, I don't really think any Mosasaur would be this terrestrial other than some of the really primitive forms like Dallosaurus, but on the bright side at least it isn't like Dinotopia. Oh, did you see that? That's actually a physical prop. Well, the Mosasaur goes back through the anomaly and it closes behind it, much to the understandable distress of the other divers.
Some kind of Mosasaur? Maybe 6 or 7 meters? Cretaceous. Let it guess.
Well, surely it's the size that's the guess, not that it's from the Cretaceous. All Mosasaurs came from the Cretaceous.
Scary. And at that size, it couldn't have been fully grown.
Take deep breaths.
Yeah.
Well, Mosasaurs came in all sorts of shapes and sizes. The aforementioned Dallosaurus was less than a metre in length. 6 metres is a reasonable size for many adult Mosasaurs. Meanwhile, Abby thanks Connor for saving her life, and we get some awkward romance between the two of them.
You can let go now.
Back at the Home Office, Cutter is explaining how the anomalies could occur on a fault line much like an earthquake.
It could crash its way through into our time again, anywhere along this line.
Earthquakes, temporal fault lines. We're trying a little bit too hard, people. It's random chance, that's all. There's no connection with any of it.
So right, now the writers have decided that Ben Miller is an absolute stubborn idiot who won't listen to anything Cutter says. And how do you think they're going to hammer that point home a little bit more?
You people, you're worse than the climate change mob.
Well, whatever happened to global warming, eh?
Stop. From October the 1st, if you say whatever happened to global warming, eh? Whenever it's a bit cold or wet, you could be cooling off in a prison cell.
Can you look at this weather, eh? Still, I'm sure it'll all average out statistically to indicate a long-term warming trend.
So now we enter the final segment of the episode, where a third Cretaceous anomaly opens up in a suburban household. This time it isn't in a body of water, just in the basement, where the washing machine is. It lets in quite a bit of water, but I'm not sure it's enough, given it's coming from a massive ocean. Back at university, it's time for more of a 50-year-old screenwriter's knowledge of nerd culture.
Mosasaur, eh? Cretaceous era marine predator. Anything from 2 to 20 meters in length and 2 tons in weight. Extinct 65 million years ago.
How can something be 20 metres in length and simultaneously only 2 tons in weight? Also, no Mosasaur ever grew to 20 metres in length. He leaves the two goofballs as he has better things to do, which leaves tall ginger one to say,
You know, I think we need to keep a closer eye on that boy.
"Oh, I'm sure that won't backfire on you." Meanwhile, Stephen sees pictures of the anomaly and starts remembering Helen again. He talks to Nick about it, who reveals that he's in two minds about Helen because she did allow him to think she was dead for 8 years. Stephen says that Cutter should go after her and then reveals an interesting plot detail.
But she was important to me too.
I know that.
So the homeowner gets in a Welsh plumber to have a look at what she thinks is a leaky washing machine.
Well, your dog's enjoying a swim anyway.
We haven't got a dog.
Then she just up and leaves, despite the fact that there may be a stray dog in the house. But it's much, much worse than that. It is, in fact, a Hesperornis. Now, we complain about Jurassic Park with its scaly raptors, but Primeval goes one further. It has a scaly avian bird. How do you get that sort of thing so wrong? By the way, this is what a Hesperornis should look like. Connor makes it to the stairs and the homeowner finally comes back.
It looks like a plumber was attacked in someone's cellar. She claims that the damage was done by some kind of large reptile.
And given it had no feathers, I can't blame her.
I suppose you're going to tell me this town lies directly on Cutter's mythical fault line. I'm really beginning to dislike that man.
But why though? If he's right all the time, that makes him more valuable. Back at the anomaly, the body of the diver who went through earlier finally arrives.
All units, a second body has been found in the basement. I repeat, a second body has been found in the basement.
A second body? You mean the plumber was actually killed by that Hesperornis? Are you kidding me? Captain Ryan spots that the diver has a handkerchief on his hands with the initials HC. So yeah, long story short, HC stands for Helen Cutter, and she sent it as a message for Nick to come visit her on the other side of the anomaly. Stephen reveals to Abby that he's finally remembered why she's really annoyed with him, and that he's kind of drifted apart from his girlfriend in the years they've been separate. But Abby's not interested. Ben Miller turns up at the house and explains to the team that they need to find Helen because she'll be vital to their understanding of the anomalies. Cutter says he'll go get her on his own without any military interference. So Cutter sets out with a mile of rope, an hour of air and a large harpoon gun. Why is Captain Ryan wearing tracksuits on a mission? So he swims through the anomaly and arrives in the Cretaceous seas. Immediately he is surrounded by Hesperonychus, which don't immediately try to kill him. He begins to search among the Hesperonychus rookeries by the shore when he spots a familiar face.
A familiar sight on the coast of the Cretaceous. These birds are called Hesperonychus.
Of course it's actually Helen, who behaves like nothing's happened between the two of them in 8 years. She explains that she stayed away for so long because she knew that Nick would tell everyone else about the discovery of the anomalies.
Hey!
You're telling me an animal this stupid managed to kill someone? Back in the present day, another plot point emerges.
In theory, a creature could make its way along the sewage system all the way to the river. And once it's there, it could go anywhere.
And?
Well, good news is, the size of the drains rules out anything bigger than a small mosasaur.
How small?
Not small enough.
Well, first of all, for the mosasaur to cause any damage, these would have to be pretty big pipes. Secondly, it doesn't matter anyway because no other creature comes through the time portal. It's also at this point where the team realise that the civil service might be betraying them. So Helen tries to persuade Nick to go on adventures with her through time. Nick tries to persuade her to come back with him to the present. And neither of them can persuade each other, so they go their separate ways.
Well, every time Hesperonychus go on a fishing trip, they have to enter the deadliest sea of all time.
The Cutter gets biffed around a bit by the smaller mosasaur and manages to lose all of his swimming gear. However, just as he's about to be eaten by the smaller mosasaur... So if that smaller mosasaur was about 6 or 7 meters long, this one's got to be, what, 50? The Deus Ex mosasaur drags off the antagonist as Cutter is dragged back through the time port. But whoa, he's not breathing, and he is again. But the show ain't over yet because, surprise surprise, Ben Miller sent in the soldiers to get Helen back anyway. So that was episode 3. As per usual, the animals were dreadfully inaccurate. I really did like the ideas introduced in this episode, and it's a shame that in following series we didn't see much in the way of environmental change caused by anomalies, and I don't recall seeing any anomalies occurring across fault lines.